How can you still be single with those two burdens dragging you down?" The words sliced through the Christmas dinner like broken glass. My hands froze around the wine bottle, trembling as Sarah's laughter filled our childhood home. The twins looked up from their plates, 7-year-old eyes wide with confusion I'd tried so hard to shield them from. "Maybe if you weren't so desperate, you'd find someone willing to take on damaged goods," my sister continued, her voice honey-sweet with venom. "I am their mother." And in that moment, watching my children's faces crumble, I felt something die inside me, and something else begin to burn. Before we begin, if you enjoy true and exciting stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Write in the comments what city or country you are watching from. Now, let's get to the beginning of this story. Our Thanksgiving dinners had always been perfect productions. Mother's antique china gleamed under the crystal chandelier, each place setting precise as a museum display. Sarah arrived with her husband Marcus, their pristine life wrapped around them like expensive perfume. The conversation flowed in careful streams: Marcus's promotion, Sarah's charity work, the vacation home in the Hamptons. I brought homemade rolls and helped serve, invisible in my familiar role. Emma and Ethan sat quietly, their small hands folded in their laps the way I'd taught them. Good children, grateful children. They knew the rules here. Speak only when spoken to. Smile when adults looked their way. Never mention why Daddy wasn't coming to dinner anymore. "The twins are growing so fast," Mother said, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for discussing problems that couldn't be solved. "What grade are they in now?" "Second grade," I replied, watching Emma trace patterns on her napkin. "They're both reading above level." "How nice," Sarah murmured, but her eyes held that familiar glitter, the look that meant she was loading ammunition. The same look she'd had when we were children, and she'd found something to use against me. The house felt heavier with each passing moment, weighted down by unspoken judgments and practiced silences. Even the air seemed thinner, as if the very oxygen was rationed based on worth. The cracks started showing during dessert. Sarah's voice turned sharper when she asked about my situation. Her husband chuckled at jokes that weren't quite jokes. Mother's sighs grew more pointed each time the twins asked for seconds. "It must be so hard," Sarah said, cutting her pie into perfect triangles. "Managing everything alone. I honestly don't know how you do it." The words sounded sympathetic, but her smile was surgical. "We manage fine," I said quietly, aware of Emma's eyes on me. "Oh, I'm sure you do your best," Mother interjected. "But children need stability. They need their mother," I finished, my voice steadier than I felt. Sarah's laughter tinkled like breaking bells. "Of course they do, but surely you've thought about, well, finding someone? Though I suppose it's complicated now." The twins had stopped eating. Ethan's small hand found mine under the table, warm and trusting. I squeezed back, a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. That's when the house began to feel like a tomb, all marble surfaces and echoing spaces, beautiful and cold and suffocating. The attacks came in waves after that. Sarah's comments grew bolder, each one disguised as concern. "Maybe if you took better care of yourself. Men don't usually want to take on someone else's responsibilities. The children would benefit from a father figure, don't you think?" Marcus joined in with his own brand of helpful advice. "Have you considered online dating? Though you'd need better photos. Something more appealing." I watched my children shrink into themselves with each comment. Emma's face grew pale, her small fingers twisting her dress. Ethan stared at his plate, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. The dining room felt like it was closing in, the walls breathing with malice. The chandelier's light seemed harsh now, exposing every flaw, every inadequacy. The clock on the mantel ticked louder, counting down moments until something terrible would happen. "Really, though," Sarah continued, her voice carrying across the table like smoke, "don't you ever wonder what you did wrong? I mean, he left you with twins. That says something about Sarah." Mother's voice held a warning, but it was too little, too late. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the kill shot that was coming. Then came the final blow, delivered with Sarah's prettiest smile while she reached for more wine. How can you still be single with those two burdens dragging you down? Maybe if you weren't so desperate, you'd find someone willing to take on damaged goods. The words hung in the air like poison gas. I watched Emma's face crumble, watched Ethan's eyes fill with tears he was too proud to shed. My hands shook as I set down my fork. Time moved differently after that, frames stuttering like an old film reel. I heard myself excuse us from the table, my voice coming from somewhere far away. I gathered our coats with mechanical precision, my children following behind like wounded soldiers. "Don't be so sensitive," Sarah called after us. "I'm just trying to help." The woman who apologized for existing, who bent and broke and smiled through humiliation, died in that doorway. What walked out into the November cold was something harder, something that would never again beg for scraps from people who served poison for dinner. The twins cried in the car. I didn't. The silence in my apartment felt different from the silence at Mother's house. This was clean silence, honest silence. Emma and Ethan sat on the couch, still processing what had happened. I made hot chocolate and said nothing about the tears. "Mom?" Emma's voice was small. "Are we burdens?" "You are the best thing that ever happened to me," I said, meaning every word. That night, after they were asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. My friend Rachel had been texting for weeks about some article she wanted to write. Rachel, who worked at the Tribune. Rachel, who specialized in investigative journalism. "Remember that favor you owe me?" I typed. "I need you to look into someone." The response came back within minutes. "Who are we investigating?" "Marcus Whitfield, Sarah's husband. Something about him has never felt right." My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed the final message. "Find out what he's hiding." The cursor blinked like a heartbeat in the dark. Rachel's first call came 3 days later. Her voice was tight with excitement and something else, concern. "You need to sit down for this," she said. "Marcus Whitfield isn't just hiding something. He's been running a systematic con for the last 5 years. Real estate fraud, specifically targeting elderly investors." The files she'd gathered painted a picture of calculated cruelty. Fake investment opportunities, forged documents, elderly victims losing their life savings. Marcus would charm his way into retirement communities, presenting himself as a successful businessman with exclusive opportunities. "There's more," Rachel continued. "I found a whistleblower from his old firm. Marcus has been using Sarah as his cover. The perfect wife, the charity work, the family connections. She's been unknowingly providing him with social credibility." I thought about Sarah's charity lunches, her involvement with the senior center where she'd met so many of Marcus's eventual victims. The irony was bitter as medicine. "How many people has he hurt?" I asked. "At least 30 that I can document, maybe more." Rachel's voice dropped. "One woman, Mrs. Chen, lost her entire retirement savings. She had to move in with her son. Another man, Mr. Peterson, he was going to leave money to his grandchildren for college." The faces of those elderly victims superimposed themselves over Emma and Ethan's tear-stained cheeks. Different generations, same kind of vulnerability, same kind of predator. For 2 weeks, I maintained perfect normalcy. I went to work, helped with homework, made dinner, read bedtime stories. But underneath, Rachel and I were building something that would burn down Marcus's carefully constructed world. She gathered documents while I watched him at family events, seeing him differently now. The way he steered conversations toward investment opportunities, the business cards he always seemed to have ready. The elderly church members Sarah introduced him to with such pride. "He's still active," Rachel reported. "I've traced 3 new victims from the last month alone." Sarah called occasionally, her voice bright with false concern. I hope you're not still upset about Thanksgiving. You know I only want what's best for you and the children." While she spoke, I organized Rachel's evidence into neat folders: bank records, victim statements, documented lies, forged signatures. Marcus's empire was built on the trust of people who reminded me of my grandmother. Kind, generous people who believed in handshakes and good intentions. "Of course I understand," I told my sister, my voice calm as still water. "Family is everything." The article published on a Tuesday morning. Rachel had titled it, "The Charity Circuit Predator: How One Man Used Social Connections to Steal Millions." I was drinking coffee when my phone started buzzing. Text after text, call after call. Marcus's photo was on the front page of the Tribune's website, alongside mugshots from his arrest the night before. The FBI had been watching him for months, Rachel explained later, but our evidence provided the final pieces they needed. Wire fraud, elder abuse, tax evasion. The charges rolled out like thunder. Sarah's first call came at 7 a.m., her voice breaking. "How could you do this to us? He's my husband." "He's a predator," I replied quietly. "He stole from people who trusted him." "You destroyed my marriage out of spite." I thought about Mrs. Chen, alone in her son's basement apartment because Marcus had stolen her home. I thought about Mr. Peterson, explaining to his grandchildren why college wasn't possible anymore. "I protected his victims," I said. "The ones he hurt, the ones you helped him meet." The silence stretched between us like a severed bridge. Within days, their world imploded with the thoroughness that only public disgrace can achieve. Marcus's assets were frozen pending investigation. Sarah's social circle evaporated as quickly as morning dew. The charity boards quietly asked for her resignation. Their house went into foreclosure. I watched from a distance as reporters gathered outside their gate, as former friends crossed the street to avoid Sarah at the grocery store. The same social machinery that had once elevated them now ground them down with mechanical precision. But I felt no satisfaction in their suffering. Only a quiet sense that justice, however delayed, had finally arrived. The real satisfaction would come from knowing that Mrs. Chen might get some of her money back, that Mr. Peterson's grandchildren might still have hope for college. Marcus's trial made national news. Rachel's reporting won a state journalism award. Sarah moved back in with Mother, her marriage and reputation in ruins. 6 months later, I got a letter from Mrs. Chen. The FBI had recovered about 60% of what Marcus had stolen from his victims. It wasn't everything, but it was hope. "Thank you for giving me back my dignity," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me that someone cared." I tucked the letter into my jewelry box, next to the twins' baby pictures and the divorce papers I'd never been ashamed of. Evidence of survival, all of it. Emma and Ethan bloomed in the months that followed. Without the weight of shame pressing down on them, they laughed louder, dreamed bigger, stood straighter. Emma started writing stories. Ethan took up piano. They both learned that their family of 3 was complete exactly as it was. We moved to a smaller apartment with better light. I planted herbs on the fire escape and taught the twins to cook. Sunday dinners became ours alone. Messy, loud, imperfect, and full of love. One Saturday morning, while Emma read to Ethan in their room, I stood at my kitchen window watching the sunrise paint the sky gold. Their giggles drifted down the hall like music. My phone buzzed, a text from Mother. The twins looked happy at the school play. "You're doing something right." It wasn't an apology. It might never be. But it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. I made pancakes shaped like stars and listened to my children plan their day. When Emma asked if we could visit the park, I said yes without checking my schedule, without counting costs, without asking permission from anyone. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. And you? What do you think? Did she do the right thing? What would you have done in her place? If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us what you thought in the comments. Your support is what helps us continue bringing you exciting stories like this one. Now watch other stories on screen. We'll see you next time, with love and respect.